Namaskar, and once again in this Facebook Live program, we welcome you all on behalf of Bharatiya Itihas Sankalan Samiti, Karimganj district. And today we have one of the renowned educationists of Northeast region, Professor Lokendra Singh, and he is a well-known person in this arena of history in the northeastern region. And presently, he is the Director, Center for Human Rights and Duties, and Education, and HOD of the Department of Manipur University. And he is very much a good historian, an educationist, and as well as he is also the president of Bharatiya Itihas Sankalan Samiti, Manipur Prant. So today, actually, the topic he has chosen is a very interesting topic, and the topic is that is Anglo-Manipur War, 1891. So this is a very important topic on behalf of this northeastern zone. So welcome, sir. And first of all, we welcome, sir, as you have accepted our invitation, and you just you are with us, and we the people are eagerly waiting to hear you on this topic. And for the 1 week probably, we are just waiting to hear you. And all the people, those who are associated with this Samiti, as well as the people, those who have shown this, saw this one in Facebook banner, they are also eagerly waiting for you to hear you. So thank you, sir, for joining us, and you may start, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Dr. Day. And I'm also extremely grateful to the Bharatiya Itihas Sankalan Samiti, Karimganj district, for giving me this opportunity to give a talk on the Anglo-Manipur War. Actually, Manipur was a very ancient kingdom, and Manipur came into contact with East India Company as early as 1762. In 1762, because of the internal conflict in the Darbar, that was the time when Raja Bhagachandra, was in command of the royal palace, and because of the internal conflict in the royal palace, they wanted to have some kind of relationship with the East India Company, and the company was already in absolute control of the part of the Bengal, province after the Battle of Plassey, and of course subsequently after the Battle of Buxar, East India Company was going to play a more important role in the Bengal presidency, in the Bengal province. East India Company wanted to have friendly relationship with the Kingdom of Manipur because of their interest in expanding their trade towards the east. And East India Company was also very particular of taking care of the ever expanding Burmese power in northeastern India, because the Burmese under the Konbong dynasty, under the command of the King Alampra, constantly Burmese was trying to intrude upon the Brahmaputra Valley as well as the Surma Valley, and therefore the Burmese was, the East India Company was interested to use Manipur as a buffer zone, and therefore when there was a request from the side of the Manipur Palace, the royal palace, for assistance in order to resolve the internal conflict and also to take the assistance of the East India Company in their resistance of the expanding Burmese authority in the northeastern part of the country. The East India Company was interested to sign a treaty with the royal authority of Manipur. And in fact, when we go to the clauses of this treaty, it's very clear that the East India Company wanted to have a military base in Manipur, and they wanted to have set up a fort with the proper sufficient number of security personnel, and they also wanted that there should be trading relationship with the King of Manipur. So that was the interest of the East India Company. Then the relationship for about 60, 70 years, because of the internal conflict inside the royal palace, the Manipuri princess, they had to go over, in fact, in the Surma Valley, and they were trying to establish their, political basis in the Surma Valley also. And ultimately, the first Anglo-Burmese war, it came. And during the first Anglo-Burmese war, the East India Company, they wanted to use of the Manipuri princes who were based in the Surma Valley to take the initiative of driving out the Burmese who had already taken control of the Kingdom of Manipur between 1819 and 1826. And by that time, the Burmese had also started having a little bit of, say, control in the Brahmaputra Valley, and that they were having its targets in the Surma Valley. So Gambhir Singh, Prince Gambhir Singh, who was already based at the Kachar area, he took the leadership, and he and Lieutenant Pemberton of the East India Company, they took the leadership. They raised a levy called the Manipur levy of 500 armed and properly trained personnel. And this 500 armed and trained personnel, they left Prasilja, then they came to Manipur Valley, and they drive out the Burmese, and ultimately Gambhir Singh was installed as the King of Manipur after driving out the Burmese. And the Treaty of Yandabu was signed in 1826, and as per the treaty, the clause 2 of the Treaty of Yandabu, the last sentence of clause 2 of the Treaty of Yandabu, it says that if King Gambhir Singh so desire, the independence of Manipur will be recognized by Burma, and the signatory of the Treaty of Yandabu was East India Company and the representative of the King of Burma. So between 1926, after the signing of Treaty of Yandabu, and between 1926 and 1891, the political status of the Kingdom of Manipur was by and large, should I say, independent, in the sense that there was no any kind of treaty or sanar which legally subordinates the Kingdom of Manipur to the East India Company. The East India Company, they had posted one, say, political agent starting in 1935 with Mr. Gordon. He was the first political agent, but the sending of a political agent although it gives the idea that Manipur was some kind of a protectorate, there was no clear-cut, directions in terms of, say, Sanad or treaty that to define the political relationship between East India Company and Manipur. And in fact, East India Company very indirectly was trying to use Manipur in its say struggle against the Burmese expansionism. So Burmophobia actually was one of the guiding principles which played an important role in East India's say company's say policy towards Manipur. Even Johnston, who was a political agent in 1960s and 70s, if we read his book, he is very clear that that there is an ambivalent kind of a status, and there is an ambivalent kind of a relationship, say, between the Kingdom of Manipur and the East India Company. And he wrote that, say, whenever there is a strong king, the British political agent will be subordinated to the king, and whenever there is a very effective political agent, then the king often will listen to what the political agent said. So therefore, the political status of the Kingdom of Manipur between, say, Treaty of Yandabu, 1826 and 1891, when the first the Anglo-Manipur War broke out. During this time, as I said, that the status was, by and large independent. Although one can argue that the status was that kind of a protectorate also, and it was some kind of a very ambivalent kind of a political status at that time. And even Hunter, in his Imperial Gazetteer, he was very, very emphatic, and he said that Manipur was practically say independent. And after the war, when Tikendrajit was to be executed, and before execution, I'll come to this point later on, but just to show that say Barrister Manmohan Ghosh was trying to represent Tikendrajit, and so one of his basic argument to plead in favor of Tikendrajit was that, so whatever Tikendrajit was doing, it was because Tikendrajit considered the kingdom to be independent. That was the basic idea. Anyway, I'll come to this later on. So therefore, it was like this during this period between 1826 and 1891, when the war broke out. Then, around 1886, 87, after the death of King Chandrakirti anyway was brought up at Kachar during the time of because he was Gambhir Singh's son, and there was a conflict at the palace, and the mother of the prince was very particular that his son should be well protected. So she brought her to Kasar, and she was trying to, bring her son there at Kasar itself. But after Chandrakirti grew up, he claimed his throne, say, in Manipur, and he became king of Manipur, and he was protected by his uncle under the regency of his uncle Pranar Singh. Anyway, Chandrakirti ruled in Manipur for about, say, around 45-50 years. And after his death, he had around, 8 sons from different queens. And he was succeeded by the eldest son, Surchandra. And there was, say, groupism and the Darbar politics, and all the princes they were grouped into two camps, and one camp was led by Surchandra, the king himself, and the other group was led by Kulachandra, assisted by Prince Tikendrajit. This kind of groupism and power politics at the Darbar of the royal palace. It was there for quite some time, starting from around 1885, around 1895, after the Third Anglo-Burmese War. And this politics between the two groups of the princess, it was for domination of the Darbar. It was for control of the Darbar. Although Surchandra was the king, Prince Tikendrajit from the opposite camp, he and his group was trying to assert its position in the Darbar itself. So therefore, this the court politics, it became very, very apparent, and it became very open by the time when this Anglo-Manipur was war was about to come around 1890. There's a very interesting book by Mrs. Grimwood, who was the wife of the political agent Mr. Grimwood. The title of the book is My 3 Years Experience in Manipur. In this, so Mrs. Grimwood has given a very comprehensive, a very clear picture about this, differences among the princes of Manipur. And in one instance, he was trying to point out that Prince Tikendrajit was supposed to be having conflict with another prince called Pakasana over a lady, from some of the royal family called Maipakpi. So this was also quite clearly pointed out. And both the group, they were trying to maintain their dominance. Surchandra, although was the king, since the Tikendrajit was very, very aggressive, and he was very, good in the organization and in building up the strength and the force of his political group. The king, King Surchandra, was not at all very happy with what things were going on in and around the royal palace. Ultimately, on 21st September 1890, in the night, because of this conflict, the conflict became very sharp. The Tikendrajit and his group, they scaled the wall of the royal palace, and they fired gunshots. Then that was the night. As soon as the firing was there, Surchandra and his group, they tried to resist the aggression, but ultimately Surchandra and his group, they decided to leave the palace and take shelter at the residence of the political agent, Mr. Grimwood. It was a distance of about, 1 kilometer. It may not be 1 kilometer. The king was coming out from the western gate, because the palace enclosure, it was having 4 gates: the western gate, the eastern gate, the southern gate, and the northern gate. So in midnight, Surchandra and his group, along with the retainers and the other armed soldiers, they were coming out of the palace enclosure through the western gate, and they were coming to the political agent's residency. And Mr. Grimwood, his wife, and the other armed retainers were there, and King Surachandra requested the political Zen to help him in controlling the revolt in the palace. In fact, Mr. Grimwood, the political Zen, he was trying to calm down Surachandra. He was requesting Surachandra to take some time in taking a decision, because Mr. Grimwood thought that maybe he could convince Prince Shettikendrajit of the other group to resolve the matter in a peaceful way. And in fact, Mr. Grimwood was having a good relationship with Prince Tekendrojit also. And Mr. Grimwood, it's very clear in the book written by his wife, by 3 years experience in Manipur. Grimwood family was very, cordial, and they were having a very good relationship with Prince Tekendrojit. So they thought that maybe they will be able to convince Prince Tekendrojit in order to resolve the crisis. And therefore, they requested the king that he should take some time in taking a decision. On hearing this, Surachandra thought that it will not be possible to get any kind of military assistance from the political ascent, and therefore he said that he will leave the kingdom, he will go on pilgrimage, and he was taking assistance. He was requesting for assistance of the political ascent, so that he could leave, say, Manipur immediately and go on, say, pilgrimage. On his insistence, Grimwood also agreed, and the king, all his brothers, and also his, say, retainers and other supporters, some of his supporters, they were, say, coming to Calcutta, say, via, Silchar. On reaching, say, Calcutta, he complained to the Governor General as well as to the Chief Commissioner of Assam that he was attacked. There was a palace revolt, and his throne was being taken over by the other political group led by Tekendrojit, and he requested the government of India that say, appropriate measures be taken up in order that the throne be restored to him again. This issue was being highlighted in the local paper in Bengal, which was published during those days. Particularly in a paper called Dainik O Samachar Patrika, and also in Sahasa. And some of the native newspaper, they wrote that the throne should be rightfully, restored to, Surachandra Rajkumar or Maharaj Kumar Surachandra. But Lord Lansdowne took some time in taking a decision. So, meanwhile, in Manipur, Tekendrojit became the Juvraj, and the senior-most prince from the group, Kulachandra, became the king, and 2-3 of his other brothers also became, they occupied important positions in the royal court. Now, this kind of a situation was there for about 4 or 5 months, and it was communicated by the political agent, Mr. Grimwood, to the government of India as well as to the Chief Commissioner of Assam, that the conflict was resolved. Surachandra had left the kingdom on his own volition, and now there's absolute control over administration. And in fact, he was writing, he was giving information slightly in favor of the of the political group who had occupied the throne and who had occupied and who had controlled the royal darbar. However, between September, say 1890 and say March 1891, in about 5 months, because by that time, by 1891, the Third Anglo-Burmese War is already over. In 1895, Burma was clearly defeated by the British Indian Authority, and say King Thibaw had already taken shelter in Manipur, and therefore the importance of, say, Manipur in the eye of the British Indian government in its relationship with Burma as a buffer kingdom, it was gradually losing its importance, because there was a military base at Tamu, which is a border town of Burma adjacent to Manipur's border. There was military base at Kohima, then there was military base at Silchar. So when this kind of a conflict started coming up in the kingdom of Manipur, and when this kind of a political, uncertainty and the political unrest was there, said the British Indian government, particularly said Lord Lonsdown, he wanted that the recalcitrant Prince Tikendrajit should not be allowed to stay in Manipur, and he should not be allowed to play an important role in the politics and in the administrative affairs of Manipur. And therefore, it was communicated to, say, the Chief Commissioner of Assam, Mr. Quinton, that he should visit with a force of at least 400 armed soldiers, Manipur, and settle the issue there. It was decided that the new king, say Kulachandra, since he was a very peaceful kind of a person, he should be allowed to occupy the throne, but say Tikendrajit should not be allowed to stay in Manipur. He should be sent outside the state, outside the kingdom. And thirdly, that the political ascent should start playing more important role in the internal, say, affairs of Manipur. These were the three conditions which were given by the government of India to Chief Commissioner, and the Chief Commissioner was asked to visit Manipur and to implement this policy. Now, when this kind of a decision was being taken by the government of India, it was leaked in the local media, and the local media had started publishing that it's likely that the Chief Commissioner of Assam would be visiting Manipur, and that a big tiger, would be caught in Manipur. So when this kind of a situations and when this kind of a publication started coming up, obviously the local rulers, the local authority in Manipur, they also became very suspicious, and they knew that something would be coming, and they knew that something would be there, say from the side of the government of India. And therefore, when Chief Commissioner Quinton sent a message to the political agent, Mr. Grimwood, that he and his retainers would be visiting Manipur in the last part of March, enough preparation was being taken up by the authority in the royal palace to see to it that the long, preserved autonomy and a long preserved independence of the kingdom be preserved and should be retained. every sort of care was taken by, say, Prince Tikendrajit, as well as the king, Sheikh Chandra. They were very suspicious of all sort of moves which was being taken up by the political agent. Now they started having suspicion over Mr. Grimwood also, because he was the representative of the government of India. And anyway, when Chief Commissioner Quinton left Shillong on 22nd March 1891 and reached Mao, so which is the border gate between Naga Hills and Manipur, on 23rd morning, early morning. He was received by Prince Tikendrajit and another general, local general, General Thanga. So they came together. They reached Imphal in the afternoon, in the late afternoon, and as soon as Sir Quinton and his force reached Imphal Valley in the late afternoon, it was instructed to political agent that arrangements should be made for having a joint darbar between the authority of Manipur as well as the representative of the government of India, led by Mr. Quinton and Mr. Grimwood. So therefore, immediately when this kind of initiative was taken up by the British Indian authority, Sir King Kulachandra, Sir Tikendrajit, then all the important officials of the royal palace, they came to attend the darbar in the late evening at the residency, at the place of the at the residence of the political agent. But when the preparation was going on, then it had taken a little bit of more time, and the king, then Tikendrajit, then his brothers and other officials, important ministers, they were coming together. They waited for some time for the starting of the darbar with the chief commissioner and the political agent, and it had taken some time. But meanwhile, there were very suspicious kind of moves among the armed retainers, and this was noticed by Tikendrajit and the king and his supporters. Immediately, they thought that it was not a very, very positive kind of a signal, and therefore, they said that they could wait. They could not wait anymore, and then they went back without having the darbar with the chief commissioner and the political agent. And it was in that darbar that the chief commissioner wanted to read out the decision of the government of India for the exile of Tikendrajit, as well as for the increasing, control of the government of India in the affairs of Manipur through the political agent of Manipur. Then when the king, then Tikendrajit and all, when they went back, were saying that they were not feeling well, and that the darbar could be held the next day. There was no alternative, but say Mr. Quinton also had to agree with that, and they postponed the darbar on 24th of March. On 24th March, again, arrangement was made, and invitations were given to the king, then Tikendrajit and other important officials to come for the darbar. But on 24th March, the authority of Manipur, particularly the king was willing to come, but Tikendrajit did not come on the ground that he was not feeling well. And when Tikendrajit was not willing to come, then obviously the idea was to read out the message of the government of India that Tikendrajit should be say exiled from Manipur, and when Tikendrajit was not coming, then the commissioner thought that it was no point, and therefore they did not have any kind of darbar on 24th also. The proposed darbar was again cancelled. On 24th March, Chief Commissioner and his advisors, they decided to attack the palace, and they wanted to arrest Tikendrajit. In the night of 24th March, all the important, some military officers are supported by around, say, 430 security personnel. They attacked the Kangla, or the royal citadel, or the royal palace and its fort. And they attacked the place where Tikendrajit was supposed to be staying, but Tikendrajit was not there at night. So there was shooting, and there was fighting, open fighting, and there was open gun fighting between the forces of Mr. Quinton and the forces of the royal palace. It continued, fighting continued throughout the night of, say, 24th March. And since they could not arrest Tikendrajit, and since there were casualty on both sides, ultimately Quinton forces, they retreated to Residency, and in the evening, in the afternoon of, say, 25th March, Mr. Quinton and his advisors, they decided that a truce should be there. There should be a dialogue of resolving the conflict and the differences between the British Indian representative and the Manipuri authority, and it was messages were sent to the Manipuri authority that the representative of the British Indian authority, led by Mr. Quinton, and 4 others, European officials, they would be visiting, and they would be having an audience with the Manipur king at the royal palace, within the enclosure. So the permission was granted. Then they came. These 5 British officials, they came. So Mr. Quinton was there. Then Mr. Greenwood, the political agent, was there. Then Lieutenant Lugard was there. Then Lieutenant Breckenbury was there. So these 5 people, they entered the royal enclosure, and they were very eager to have a dialogue with the king of Manipur as well as his officials. But as soon as they entered the royal enclosure, so the British officers were asked to surrender their gun, to leave behind their their personal arms, which was resisted in the beginning, but ultimately they yielded to the pressure, and they left behind their personal arms to the sentries who were there around the royal palace. As soon as they entered, as soon as these 5 British officers entered for having a dialogue, there was some kind of a riot. There was a mob within the enclosure, because on 24th night, because of the shooting between the Manipuri authorities and the British Indian forces presented by Mr. Quinton, many of the some of the villages or some of the localities which were outside the royal enclosures and also within the royal enclosures, there some casualties were there. Some women and children, they were also wounded, and because of the problem which was created on 24th night, there was a lot of unrest and there was a lot of frustration within the among the supporters or among the officials of the Manipur Authority, and therefore the moment they see the 5 British officials entering the royal enclosure to have a dialogue, they suddenly flared up. Some of the officials flared up, and a conflict, situation had emerged. And because of the conflict situation, it was some kind of a mob. Ultimately, in that conflict, the 5 British officials were killed. And the news of the death of the 5 British officials who had entered the royal enclosure for having a dialogue, for having a peaceful truce with the authority of Manipur, when it was not successful, and when the entire initiative from the side of the British Indian government was scuttled in a very unusual way. The forces which remained at the residency, they became very restless, and on 25th night itself, Mrs. Grimwood and some of the officials, they thought that it's better to leave Manipur. Mrs. Grimwood, uncertain of even the condition of her husband, as well as, although they suspected that the 5 officials might have been, killed, they were not very clear about it, but they decided that, Mrs. Grimwood also decided that the remaining officials, some of them should leave Manipur immediately, and it should be informed to the authority of the British Indian government at Silchar and at Calcutta. And therefore, on 25th night, late night, so Mr. Grimwood escaped via Silchar, and they reached Calcutta, and from Calcutta they had given detailed information to the British Indian government. So when this kind of a development was there on the side of the British Indian government, they were thoroughly, Lord Lonssound was very, very unhappy. The misadventure, it was called misadventure by some of the local media in Calcutta. 5 British officials were killed. There was a lot of confusion in the royal palace of Manipur also, but nevertheless, the confusion was controlled by, Kulachandra and Prince Lokendra Singh, and they continued to run the administration. Although they continued to run the administration for some time, Lord Lonssound took a decision that Manipur, the kingdom of Manipur, should be attacked. There should be military attack from 3 sides. One column was supposed to be coming from, Tamu, on the Burmese side, because Burma had already become a part of the British Indian Empire after the 3rd Anglo-Burmese War. The Tamu column was led by, Brigadier Graham. Another force which was based at, Kohima, of around, 1,000 armed personnel. It was led by Lieutenant General Collett, and he was he was the commander-in-chief of the Manipur Field Force. A 3rd column was coming from Silchar, which was led by, Colonel Rennick. And all these 3 columns from 3 sides, they were coming, and they were supposed to meet at the Imphal Valley on, 25 and the 26th of April. So these 3 colors were coming. The Kohima column, which was led by, Lieutenant General Collett, it was resisted by Khurai Lakpa with around, 1,000 armed personnel of the Manipuri force, but they could not resist because this force was coming with field guns and a very well-trained say armed personnel. The column, which was led by say Colonel, say Rennick, say from Silchar, so it was resisted by an officials by a Maharaj Kumar, called say Kalasana, but say Colonel Rennick also could overrun the force which was led by say Kalasana. But the most important say battle between say Manipur and the British Indian government, it was fought at Khongjong and in the Thobal area. This force was led by Brigadier Graham, and in a place called Khongjong, there was a very severe hand-to-hand fight. The British force was coming with very effective artillery and a field gun. They were stationed at a hillock, and they were trying to shut down the Manipuri forces, which was say collected, which was there, which was stationed, at a place at a paddy field, and that paddy field, the size of the camp was around say 140 by 140 per yards of camp, and it was surrounded on all sides by the mud wall, so it was some kind of because Graham's force could easily attack this place from a hillock with the field artillery gun, and therefore, although there was a hand-to-hand fight because of the approaches which were being made by the British say armed personnel and other security forces within the mud wall, there were hand-to-hand fighting, and in that around 97 Manipuri soldiers died, and that was on the 25th of April. And when this battle was taking place, Colonel Rennick had reached Imphal and had entered the royal fortress, and Colonel Rennick had hoisted the Union Jack on say 27 April 1891, and on say 27 April 1891, most of the forces which was coming from three sides, they met together, and they had established absolute control over the royal palace. Many of the princes, they were trying to trace them, and over a period of about a week, many of the officials and the princes who were trying to avoid the British officials, ultimately they were cornered, and they were put under they were tried by a court. The princes were tried by a court led by two senior military officials, assisted by a civil officer, and this military court, this court, which was led by two senior military officers, ultimately, they sentenced Prince Tikendrajit, then King Kulchandra. They were about to give the sentence. There was a repeated request from the side of Tikendrajit and the Kulchandra to allow them to use some effective and some learned lawyer from Calcutta, but this was refused. They said that if they wanted to use the lawyer, then the lawyers should submit, the lawyers should plead in writing. The lawyers were not permitted to appear in person in the military court to defend Prince Tikendrajit and King Kulchandra. Ultimately, Manmohan Ghosh, who was representing Kulchandra and Tikendrajit, he had submitted his defense to the military court in in favor of Sir Tikendrajit and Kulachandra, and he was trying to argue that whatever happened on 24th March, I mean, leading to the killing of the 5 British officials, that incident had happened because, say, Manipur being an independent kingdom, they thought, the authority of Manipur thought that there was an intrusion in the affairs of an independent kingdom, and therefore they were trying to, defend the interest of Manipur, and in that conflict, the 5 officials were dead. This was the argument which was given by Manmohan Ghosh, but it was not accepted by the military ruler, and the judgment which was given for the execution of Sir Tikendrajit was confirmed, but the judgment which was given for the execution of King Kulachandra, it was commuted to life imprisonment, because he was not directly responsible for the killing of the 5 British officials. Then one important general, General Thangal, who was instrumental in the killing of the 5 British officials, the judgment which was given for the execution of Thangal was also confirmed. Then 2 other officials who were directly involved in the killing of the 5 British officials. One is Niranjan Subedar, and another is Kajau, who had actually spared. So this Kajau spared Mr. Grimwood to death. So this 4 people, the judgment for the execution of these 4 people were confirmed by the military court, and ultimately Tikendrajit and Thangal were executed on 13 August in the afternoon, and Kazao and Niranjan Subedar, they were executed a day before 13 August. And it was very brute kind of show of strength by the British Indian authority to make the people aware that any kind of revolt against the British Indian authority would have to be treated like that. These 4 people were hanged in broad daylight in front of the entire people, and they were interested that people should be aware of the kind of decisions that British Indian authority would be taking when any instances of revolt against the British Indian authority would take place. After the execution of the princes and some of the officials were directly involved in revolting against the British Indian authority, the administration was taken over by the chief political officer, Mr. Maxwell. On the question of what kind of a political status should be given to Manipur, the issue was debated in the British Parliament. There were differences of opinion among the MPs on this issue of what kind of a political status should be given. One group of Parliament, they argued that Manipur is a very small kingdom, and Manipur does not have that much of resources, for the establishment of a very effective British administration. Because at the establishment of an effective British administration would be very, very expensive. And these MPs, they argued that Manipur be given the status of a princely state with 11-gun salute. Some other MPs, they argued that Manipur should be properly annexed. But ultimately, it was decided that Manipur should be retained as a princely state with 11-gun salute under the British paramountcy. And that is how, after the Anglo-Manipur War, Manipur became under the British paramountcy as a native state with 11 concelli. And from 1891 to 1949, till Manipur was annexed, no, till Manipur was merged. Manipur was under British paramountcy between 1891 to 1947, when the Britishers left. And between 1947 and 1949, till Manipur was merged, after signing the merger agreement, for 2 years, Manipur was having a political status of some kind of an autonomous, having some kind of an autonomous political, status, because in the period between 1947, when the Britishers left, and the real merger of Manipur into the Indian Union in 1949, in October 1949, during this period, Manipur was ruled under a constitution which was drafted and which was adopted by the Darbar, and Manipur was under some kind of a constitutional monarchy. The king was there, but Manipur was under a government, which was elected under the constitution, drafted and accepted by the authority of Manipur at that time. And it's a very complex kind of a political status between 1947 and 1949, when Manipur was directly merged into Indian Union. So that's the story of how an ancient kingdom was gradually, gradually being integrated into the British Indian Empire, and subsequently into the Indian Union after its merger in October 1949. With these few words, I would like to thank all the viewers and the listeners for giving a short patient hearing. It's a very complex story. I'm not very sure if I'm able to put across the main currents of the story that I wanted to say. With these few words, I would like to thank all of you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your beautiful and informative speech. As a student of history, I like your speech and hope that all the students, actually, those who are hearing and will hear in the near future, will be inspired and will know something what is actually not there in our textbook. Because as I am the student of this history, some of the things are missing still. I have learned a lot of things from your speech today. So I hope that, especially for the students, I am saying this one, sir, that your speech is very much informative, and the people, those who are hearing from western part of India or from the northern part also, are interested to know about Manipur, and especially how the Manipur, Anglo-Manipur War occurred and what are the reasons. You have so beautifully delivered the speech. And also the interesting thing is that how Manipur merged with the Indian Union in October, because in 1949, probably another state of northeastern region, that is Tripura, it has in 10th October in 1949, it has merged with the Indian Union. So these things are actually unknown to the people of other parts of our country. And this your speech will, I think that it will inspire the people to know about Manipur and also this field especially. So thank you, sir, very much, and thank you once again from our Jila Committee, and hope that you will bless us and we will continue our program. So thank you, sir, very much. And to our viewers also, and the next day, once again, we are meeting with our same another eminent guest lecture. And till then, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.